All right, guys, what's going on? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. Now, over for a long time now, we've talked about, well, if you think about it, it's more like what XDefiant needs to do and what XDefiant is just not able to do, right? And what it's incapable of, and where we were in terms of where we are now, the reasons as to why a lot of people have lost faith in the game, even for those that like the game, etc., etc. However, I want to take this video in a different direction because there's two ways that you can think, right? You can either roll over and die, or you could be like, you know what if I could? Let's not think about what I can't do. What if it's like, what if I actually could? Now let's talk about this and translate it over to XDefiant. Right? We've already talked about the things that the game needs to get done. We've already talked about a lot of the things that a lot of people in the community have said, whether they're insiders or not, whether they're different content creators or not. You know, with everything going on with Ubisoft right now in terms of the stock plummeting and all that kind of stuff, we've acknowledged this, and every single, like, I for one will tell you right now that this video that I'm, in terms of what I'm about to say, is going to be the biggest what if moment. But at the same time, as long as the game continues to crawl forward, and it's in a crawling state right now, no doubt about it. If the game continues to crawl forward, there's always a chance. There's always a chance that it can get to stage 2, stage 3, beyond, etc., etc. Granted, it's slow, but it could still get there. And we're going to talk about the best case scenario. And again, I acknowledge that this is a very big what if. I acknowledge that this is like, if this were to actually happen, it is going to be a Cinderella story within gaming history, to be quite honest. But again, as long as the game still breathes, there's always hope. So let's talk about that, okay? Because we've been a little too, well, I don't want to say we've been too negative, because if you actually listen to what I have to say, I'm not really negative about the game. I'm just pointing out things that I've seen quoted, read, you know, trying to put the pieces together and kind of walking that line of both sides. But because of the fact that there's so much negativity towards this game, I don't want to attract negativity to the point to where it literally, you know, pushes the game towards death. Because as we know, the game itself, like, having XDefiant around is good because it's competition, right? And as long as, like, if I look at the entire picture of XDefiant as opposed to looking at where we are right now, if I look at the entirety of where we were before in terms of to where we are now, we are in a better state now than what we were previously. The problem is, it's just not happening quite to the speed that it needs to happen in, which hopefully will change in the future. But here's the thing. Before we get into the big what if that will make people think that I'm on something is that basically Ubisoft, it all needs to start with Ubisoft and for them to get their head out of their ass. Because as of right now, and in terms of the one of the videos that I made previously, they've been going in a certain direction, and it has not been working financially. So Ubisoft needs to pull a 180 or even more than that, and basically needs to turn things for the better. Now, obviously, XDefiant is still a game that I've mentioned in previous videos that is still, like, from a development standpoint, it's still headed in the right direction. Granted, it's not getting there quick, but again, headed in the right direction. The devs, I do believe they know what they're doing, especially the ones that are, like, in charge, the ones that are leading the way. They know what they're doing, and I have faith that in the long run, it's still possible for it to get there. However, XDefiant has, again, all starting with Ubisoft. If Ubisoft were to actually, like, because right now they're in a desperate state. If everything that we've been reading and you know, whether it's, you know, everything that we've been reading online and everything that we've been seeing in videos and stuff like that from insiders, you name it, right? If it is all true, okay, especially since it's going to be an earnings call at the end of this month. If it is all true, XDefiant is, excuse me, not XDefiant, but Ubisoft themselves are in a desperate state right now. So this is the opportunity that they need to take in order to get their head out of their ass and to basically do a 180 or more and basically start doing things the right way. Now, if this were to happen, and if Ubisoft were to, and again, this is a big if. This entire video is one big if. But if this were to happen, XDefiant has the potential of making history. Okay, now let's look at everything that we have at our disposal here. Despite the fact that money is down bad, we still have a little bit of Ubisoft juice in the tank in terms of money, right? Not much, but a little. We've got IPs that are at our disposal. We have an engine that's being converted from that's being normally used for a third-person game, right? That's being converted to a first-person shooter experience. And you guys might know where I'm going with this. When you look at the IPs, when you look at what a whole bunch of people are talking about in the community, when you're looking at the different genres of gaming, XDefiant is in a perfect position to literally make history. And let's start with finishing what it started in the first place, perfecting its multiplayer. If XDefiant were to actually make it to where it gets through year 1, right? Season 3 gets released, Season 4 gets released, with all the content in there, the features that have been said are there, everything that the community has wanted in terms of the basics, in terms of what a classic arcade first-person shooter should be, with all the bells and whistles and the basics that need to be there in terms of its foundation are there. We're talking everything from netcode to features, you name it. All the stuff that you guys have been asking for, or should I say the majority of the stuff that you guys have been asking for in terms of features and everything else. If all of that is in the game, it would be a damn shame for a game with so many IPs under the Ubisoft umbrella to just stop at the arcade first-person shooter, especially when its engine is made for a third-person shooter. So what am I getting at here? I'm getting at a horde mode or a Rabbids mode or some sort of extra mode with all these maps that we have that XDefiant has within Arena as well as linear maps. Like, how hard would it for them to make a battle royale? How hard would it be for them to create a third-person shooter with all these different kinds of IPs that are under the Ubisoft umbrella? Right? Think about that for a second. What about a Zombies Forge / Horde mode? What about all these different legendary characters that are within the Ubisoft umbrella, such as Sam Fisher, to name one, right? Or even Ezio from the Assassin's Creed universe that a lot of people have really taken to over the years. That is a Ubisoft favorite character in terms of the fan base, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is that, again, I've said in previous videos that XDefiant could be the Smash Brothers of arcade shooters. But what if it went beyond that? What if it actually went beyond and became a game that wasn't just limited to the arcade shooter? Because again, year 1 is the foundation, right? Granted, it gets there like we discussed. Year 2 is about refining it and making competitive perfect, because no matter how you put it, competitive is actually something that will draw more eyes to your game, right? So you establish the casual base, you establish a competitive base, but where do you go beyond there with all these different IPs with an engine that's also made for a third-person shooter? You add in a third-person shooter mode in there with some Rabbids and different characters from the IP. You add in, eventually, a battle royale that is consistent of the maps, and you guys know how the maps are in XDefiant, right? You know how the maps are. The maps are good, and if you take the linear maps as well as the arena maps, like I've mentioned in my previous video, that like a lot of the linear maps could be shrunk, and also you guys also mentioned that like a ground war mode would be great with the larger maps as well, which is something I did think of, but I wasn't thinking of at the time that I recorded, which is a great idea, by the way. Why can't they put all these different maps together and make a big ass nice, map that's kind of reminiscent of how the Blackout map used to be, to where it's not as cluttered at like Warzone maps are or whatnot, and make it to where it's like with its own flavor there. And there's been, and again, with all these different IPs and the way the game works, and the fact that you can even make it a third-person battle royale if you wanted it to. I mean, granted, they can stick with the first-person shooter, but again, you guys know where I'm getting at here, right? So, like, it would be a shame especially after year 2. Now, again, I know this is a ways down the road, okay? But again, I'm one of the few people that actually is willing, as long as the game, has life in it, I'm willing to stick it out because of the potential that this game has. And on top of that, let's not mention the fact that it could potentially be the first game that, if it actually gets to where I'm talking about here, or somewhere around there within time, of course, because it's been said that the game wants support for years to come. And it starts with Ubisoft getting their head out of their ass, by the way. If it manages to pull this off, XDefiant will be the first game of its kind. It'll be from a game that was doubted by 90% of the people who played it. And rightfully so, too, because you can't ignore numbers. You can't ignore the facts. You can't ignore the fact that Ubisoft is in the state that it is now. You can't ignore it. I myself don't ignore it. You shouldn't either. It is just as big of a possibility that this game could die, if not more of a possibility that this game could die, compared to what could possibly happen. However, again, as long as XDefiant still has some juice in the tank, and it continues to get support, and it crawls its way to victory, and then eventually it walks, and then eventually it starts running, without the foundation being sacrificed to get to where it needs to go with all these different avenues of potential that it has, XDefiant can literally make history by being the first of its kind to literally be a multi-shooter type of game, to where you not only have your arcade first-person shooter into the mix in both casual and competitive, but you got yourself some sort of Rabbids /Horde /zombies /firefight hybrid or something like that within the Ubisoft universe and its characters, right? And on top of that, you add a battle royale into the mix, you've got nothing but success. And it'll be the first of its kind to do what it did and to complete its vision. And wouldn't that be a hell of a Cinderella story, or a, you know, or a kind of a miracle story within the gaming universe, to where a game actually managed to pull a 180 or more and actually get there? Now, again, like, I acknowledge ever since the beginning of this video that this is the big if. It is the biggest what if video with XDefiant, and again, with all the different negativity and everything like that that's been going on with the game and the way that the people perceive it, of course. And again, rightfully so. You have the right to view it however you want. You have the right to look at the facts in terms of what Ubisoft is going through right now. And you can tell me in the comment section, left and right, and tell me how impossible this is and how I've got my head up my ass because I'm simply, you know, in fantasy land. And you'd be right. However, instead of thinking like, okay, it's impossible, well, what if it could? What if it actually could? Think about that for a second. What if it actually literally pulled a rabbit out of its ass and actually were to do this? I mean, granted, slowly but surely, but wouldn't that be something if it did? So all I'm just trying to say is, at the end of the day, regardless of wherever the chips may fall and whatever the future for this game is, whether positive or negative, as of where we stand right now, even though we're down, we're not out yet. And the thing is this: as long as XDefiant has quote unquote breath in its lungs, this is the potential future that the game has. And this is what the biggest supporters of this game are hoping for. This is what they envision. And at the same time, I think some of the devs do as well. And I know it's going to take time to get there. Granted, it gets there and we get through year one, season one, and all that stuff. And again, in the comment section, you guys can tell me also, as opposed to not just criticizing what I just have to say, because you will do that, no doubt about it, which is completely fine. I'm looking forward to reading what you guys have to say in that aspect. But I am also looking forward to reading in terms of the ideas that you guys have, because there's at least one dev that I know continuously watches my stuff. And this is the kind of stuff that they need feedback on, because, again, this goes from what we have to say in the comment section to the knowledge of the devs to Ubisoft. And again, respectfully speaking, Ubisoft needs to pull a 180 at least. It needs to start heading in the right direction. It needs to remember what made their games great in the first place, right? Starting all the way from the beginning, that gave them the fan base that they had in the first place. They need to go back to their foundation, just the way XDefiant needs to stick to its foundation and never neglect the foundation as it continues to move forward, no matter what it does. So, again, as long as there's still some juice left in the tank, we could still get there. And that's what I wanted to say in this video, guys. So let me know down in the comment section what you guys think. Do you guys support this? Do you guys oppose this? I know this is the biggest what if video in the world that you will ever listen to. I'm not on any substances before I recorded this. I just wanted to also add in a little bit of positivity, because there's too much negativity. And I know what you guys will say, well, these are the facts, Jack, and that's true. But I wanted to add in some possibility and remind people that it's still possible. And we're down, but we're not out yet. So with that being said, guys, I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section. And thank you all for taking the time to watch and or listen to this video. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.